Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Rhodes College. I was just doing a little bit of housekeeping to get the meeting set up properly. Let me make sure everybody can get in. Great. I think people, yep, are coming. So let me just tell you how I'm going to run this today. This is actually a meeting, not a technical webinar. I only say that because you can put your audio on or off, put your video on or off. It's best if you could keep your audio off, unless at some point you really want to ask a question. And, if you keep your video on, that's up to you. It's nice to see people's faces, so I appreciate when people leave their video on. This is recorded. We will send a link tomorrow. I'd love to know who is here, meaning what year your student is in high school, how many students you have. Have you even started thinking about searching for colleges and researching colleges? Love to know kind of where you are in the process. So if anybody can, oh, great. I wanted to see something come through the chat. I just saw somebody type something in the chat. Great. So somebody, high school junior, sophomore, 8th grade. Okay, this makes sense. We kind of sent it out to invite to a lot of people with sophomores and juniors in high school. So I'm glad you guys are here. I'd love if anybody can share like what they know about merit scholarships. Have they been reading about it? Have they been seeing the discussion in different Facebook groups about students receiving merit scholarships? I know nothing. That's okay. I'm going to start from a level of assuming people know nothing, but I'm just always curious to see what people know. Very difficult to find transparent information. That's somewhat true. Yes. I've been trying to learn which schools provide non-need-based merit. Yep. That's what we're going to talk about today. Somewhat true. Somebody say merit scholarships are offered by less rejective schools to the top % of accepted students. Yeah. So I think so. There's a group of you who kind of have a sense of what merit scholarships are. So merit makes expensive on paper private scholarships. Oops, I'm losing it. Often more affordable than public out-of-state schools. True. Okay. So glad to see there's some knowledge. So I'm going to share some slides. I'm going to talk about merit scholarships. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. I will try and glance over and see what those questions are. And then I'm also going to show you a tool, which we do have, that helps cut down on a lot of the research. So you can kind of see how it might be faster to do some research. And I'll also explain how you can do this research completely free. It just is a little bit more tedious. So let me start sharing. Actually, hold on one second. Let me get to my... Okay. Great. Okay. Let me just get the chat going again so I can see people's questions. Okay. If anybody can just give me a quick thumbs up to make sure that you're seeing my slides. Thank you. Okay. So you might see that says the title is Building a College List That Will Bring Your Student the Most Money. So I'm going to talk about merit scholarships. I'm going to talk about building a college list and why it's important to understand about merit scholarships and the colleges that offer it. And I'm also talking a little bit about how to pay for college because, I mean, let's face it, that's why we're interested in merit scholarships, because it's helping to reduce the cost of college. So that was my agenda. I'll talk a little bit about the SAI Student Aid Index. Luckily, you guys are not in the chaos of what is happening this year with FAFSA. Maybe you've been reading about it. So you should feel a little good about that, even though the whole process is chaotic. You're not kind of in the middle of the storm of what's happening now. And by next year, things should be settled out. But I'll talk a little bit about what that SAI calculation is, and then how you build a good balanced college list, and then how you can use our tool, R2C Insights. So I mentioned about, paying for college. There's really 3 buckets that people can get money from. If you've been able to save, that's great. And, over the years, you've probably even been able to put money away from your savings or from your income. And that's what you're going to use in terms of like your family contribution towards paying for college. Then another bucket is free money. And then the third bucket is when you don't have enough from your family contribution, you don't have enough from what you can find in free money. Obviously, families and students have to decide, am I going to borrow money? But we focus on the free money because at this point in people's, in their students' life, right? You've either been able to save as much as you can, and you want to now find as much free money as you can that's out there to bridge the gap before you have to borrow. I mean, we're not fans of borrowing. Obviously, in some cases, it's all that's left, and you have to kind of decide what your tolerance is for borrowing. You have to do more calculations to understand what that cost of borrowing is. But it's not completely out of the question, but you obviously want to maximize your first 2 buckets of free, what the family can contribute and how much money you can get in free money. And the sources of free money are financial aid, and need-based financial aid is going to be based on your family's financial situation and how much the colleges want to help need-based students. The second type of free money is merit scholarships. That's what we're going to focus on today. And the reason why we focus on it is because there isn't a financial need component to it. So you don't have to show the college that you are in a certain income bracket, or you have a certain financial need. It's going to be based on other criteria. There are private scholarships, and then there's obviously government grants. I'll give you my 2 cents about private scholarships. It's not that they are bad. To me, they are what you do at the very end. Well, you can do it all along, but I wouldn't count on it because it's a numbers game. You have to apply to a lot of places and then, see what you get back. Or you have to really focus on local private scholarships. And the other issue about private scholarships they're not renewable. So whatever your student gets for 1 year, you've got to figure out how are they going to continue to get that money a following year. And so you have to kind of do the process every year. And they usually tend to be in small amounts. You might be able to get a $500, $1,000, $5,000 probably is the max. And then those private scholarships that are more than $5,000 just become that much more competitive. So it's not that it's inconceivable to get private scholarship money. I just wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket. Okay. So I talk about merit scholarships, what colleges offer merit scholarships, but the bottom line is this all leads to doing good research and building a strategic college list. To me, the college list is the pivotal piece of the whole process, right? Your student is doing they're doing well academically in school. They're doing, or they have an academic profile. They're doing extracurricular activities. You're going to be researching colleges, going to be visiting colleges. But the colleges that are on that list really are going to drive everything at that point going forward, right? Your student is only going to be accepted from a college that they apply to. Your student's only going to get money from a college that they apply to. And the colleges that are on that list are ultimately also going to determine how much work it's going to take to apply to college, because and even though there is a common application, which has been good and bad, the good part is it makes it somewhat easy to apply to lots of different colleges, which is also the bad part because it has driven up applications tremendously at a lot of schools. But there are there's the common essay, but a lot of schools then have supplemental essays. And that's kind of where the size of the college list and what schools are on that list are going to drive how much work and how many essays your student's going to have to do. May not be bad, may be manageable. It's just something to consider as you get to the summertime, when hopefully students are going to start to focus on essays. So a lot of you kind of already got this, but merit aid in some extent is a form of a discount that the colleges are offering to students. They are saying, we have money, we want to attract a certain student. And so for that student that fits certain criteria, and in a lot of cases, it's students that are at the higher end of the school's academic profile, and we'll show you how you can determine that. We want to incentivize those students to come to our school. So those colleges are saying, you know, we're going to be willing to give you a scholarship because you have done well in the areas that we feel are important. A lot of those areas tend to be GPA and test scores, but other areas might be, you know, the talent. It could be theater, it could be music. There are auditions that some schools do for merit scholarships, and other schools, in addition to a test score and a GPA, are also asking students to write additional essays. So it could be that they're selecting students based on an additional application that they need to fill out for certain scholarships. So the positive of merit scholarships, besides reducing the net cost to the family, is that they tend to be renewable. They are scholarships that, if your student meets the criteria and the requirement to be renewable every year, they will have it freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. That's why it's so important to understand this process now, because the bulk of merit scholarships are given to students as incoming freshmen. As I mentioned, there might be a requirement. There usually actually is a requirement. You just need to know what that minimum GPA requirement is to make the scholarship renewable. That's not something I would worry about now. That's something you will get when your student is awarded merit scholarships. That will be part of the award information. And the only kind of, downside, it's not really a downside, but something to be aware of is the merit scholarship is a fixed amount. I don't think I've ever seen a merit scholarship where they say, oh, we're going to increase it at the same rate at which we increase tuition, which would be nice. So when you're planning out, and hopefully you will be, what the 4 years of college is going to cost you, you might factor in that at this school, your student has a good chance of getting a merit scholarship, so that's going to reduce the total cost, but also factor in that tuition is going to increase every year. So, and that increase is not going to be reflected in a merit scholarship. So we kind of group merit scholarships into 3 categories. These are not official. It's just a way of organizing the information so that you have an idea of what types of merit scholarships are out there. The most prevalent one is what I call automatic merit aid, and it's based on some sort of grid, and we'll show you some examples that a school has. They could be sharing that grid publicly. That's the best school. The best school is a school that gives automatic merit aid. They have a grid and they share it publicly with families on their website. We love those schools. But then there are still other schools that are giving out merit aid on an automatic basis, or they're giving it out based on some sort of GPA test score combination, or just a GPA combination or level, but they're not telling you all that information. And so we can look at some numbers to make guesses, and I'm going to show you that. So, but that's the category of what I call automatic. And the other piece that you need to know about those schools is that there's not anything additional your student has to do. They just have to apply, and usually every application that comes through is reviewed in terms of should this student receive merit or should they not. So the next category is competitive merit aid. And the big difference between the first and the second is that usually your student has to send in something else. And it's usually additional application, and it usually means additional essays. Sometimes the colleges share all that information on their website. I mean, they will share that it's the student that the scholarship is competitive, but might actually have a link to the application and it's submitted all at once. So you know ahead of time that your student is sending in a regular application to the college and is filling out additional essays for any sort of competitive merit scholarships. Other schools don't tell students that they are eligible to apply to these merit scholarships until either after they send in their application or sometimes even after they're accepted. So there are schools, and I can't think of a name off the bat. We helped several students with different additional scholarship essays where you do not find out until, unfortunately, the student sends in their application maybe December 1st, maybe January 1st. And then the good news is, hey, we want your student to apply for additional scholarships. The bad news is, oh no, there's more essays that need to be done. So again, what's hard about this space is that every college kind of approaches it their own way, and it's really hard in a global sense to have one resource that says exactly what every college is doing, because they could be changing it midstream about how they want to handle it. So the best approach, and again, we'll show you, is to kind of look at data that guides you to certain colleges, and then you're going to have to look specifically at their college websites for all the details. But at least you're going to be aware of what the things are that you're going to need to look for. And then the last I kind of mentioned would be talent-based merit aid, and it's based on some sort of talent, whether it's the art, the music, dance, theater. These are not sports scholarships, and it usually has some component of an audition, or you have to send in a portfolio. The reason why I identify and highlighting these types of merit scholarships is because the deadlines for these merit scholarships, because of auditions and because of deadlines for when portfolios might need to be submitted, are something that need to be kept track of, and usually are different than the deadlines for just sending in the application. So, and I'll mention it again. I think what's really important across all of these, automatic, competitive, and talent, across the whole process of applying to college, are deadlines. Really being on top of what the deadline is, whether it's the deadline for early application, early action, early decision, and I'll show you some schools have different deadlines for when you need to apply if you want your student to be reviewed for merit scholarships. There's different deadlines for financial aid. There's different deadlines for portfolio submissions, or when auditions need to be scheduled. So really honing in and to some extent almost having a separate spreadsheet on what all the deadlines are, it's going to be really important. Okay, let's just see, any questions? Yes, my son is hoping for both a sports scholarship and a merit aid. How hard is that going to be? That's a really good question. So sports scholarships, honestly, I would say sports scholarships at D1, D2 schools are a whole different process. And I got to be honest, I don't get involved with it because that's knowledge that coaches have, and it's a different specialty. The D3 schools, which don't give out athletic scholarships, attract athletes by giving them merit scholarships. So, you're really not going to find a school that's going to give your student an athletic scholarship and a merit scholarship. It's going to be dependent on the division that the school is in. So Division I, Division II schools are going to be giving it out based on all the rules related to the NCAA. That's going to be a true athletic scholarship. If your student applies to a Division III school, and they're eligible, they're likely to be offered merit scholarships as their form of scholarship instead of athletic scholarships. Okay, so do state schools offer merit scholarships for out-of-state students? Yes, some state schools have really honed this strategy and do it really well. The most well-known school that does this, and if you've heard, is University of Alabama. I don't know when they decided to do this. I mean, I've been in this space 8 years, and ever, maybe they started 10 years ago, and they recognized that they could attract a high caliber, high quality student that was out of state by offering them significant merit scholarships. So, and they've been very successful at doing that. And so much so that if you could probably get your hands on the percentage of out-of-state versus in-state students at University of Alabama, it's probably much higher, or maybe even over 50% out-of-state students that go there because they're getting such significant merit scholarships. So the answer is yes, state schools offer merit scholarships to out-of-state students. Again, it varies. Some state schools have made this a major strategy. Others offer it, but it's not in the significant dollar amounts that University of Alabama is offering. Okay, let's move on. So I wanted to just give you some examples of this automatic merit scholarship and the type of chart that you might find on a website. And this school is Miami University in Ohio. I've been doing this for a few years, so I actually have been saving these charts, and I just keep adding to it each year. And why I like to kind of show you the past charts is just so that you can see how things have changed. They did change because of the pandemic, and how you can see that colleges every year are going to tinker with their charts. They're going to tinker with the criteria, the GPA that they might require, and they're going to change potentially the amount of money up and down about what they're offering. So if you go back at the bottom right and you look at this chart, is from Miami University of Ohio in fall of 2020. Obviously, this is before the pandemic, when they did require both an SAT and a test score to get money. You can see that they were clearly very generous. They were offering half and full tuition scholarships. So this goes back to state school offering out-of-state money, or money to out-of-state students. At that point, they were only kind of, your GPA had to be a 3.5. They were also relying on the SAT or the ACT, and so that combination of 33 and above, or 1540 and a 3.5 in your GPA, they were giving out significant amount of money. And my guess is, if we looked at their the distribution of their SAT scores, that combination was at the very top, what we call the top 25 percentile of the students that attend Miami University. And then you can see, going to the left, fall 2021, things shifted. We had the pandemic. They no longer were listing test scores, and they were just focusing on the GPA. At the time, the highest GPA category was a 3.95, right? They were still giving out generous money, but they were starting a little lower. So they were saying, okay, that high range is going to be $13,000 to potentially a full tuition. And then you skip over. For some reason, I don't have 2022, but we're going to skip in the upper right, and that's fall of 2023. And now that top range is getting even higher. So now they're saying your student needs to have a 4.3 to be at the top, and they're starting to limit the amount of money that they're giving. So they're no longer calling it, half tuition or full tuition, and they're saying for out-of-state students, we'll give you $15,000 to $34,000. Obviously, that probably depends on the GPA range. It's not clear, even though they're not requiring a test score, it is not clear if they are also looking at the test scores if your student submits it. I know somebody wrote very early on in the chat, I wish there was more transparency. I agree. I wish we knew that, but that's, just putting that out there. And then I just grabbed this, what's happening on their website now, which is for students who just applied in this current session, and they're going to start in fall of 2024. Again, it's the same GPA at the top range. I just find it interesting that they are only telling you what the starting amount is. They're no longer telling you what the end amount is. I think they're leaving things open for themselves. So these are all little clues that you can see how the colleges kind of are doing their kind of background analysis. And one thing, I used to have a slide about this, but I'll just kind of share this information. The colleges, this isn't done kind of in a willy-nilly fashion. This isn't like, oh, let's see what we should raise the numbers to. They have consultants, major companies that specialize in doing models based on this, looking at the type of student that came in the past and how much money the school had to offer to entice that student to come. And they are constantly looking at these statistical models and adjusting year to year to say, okay, how much do we really need to offer to get that student to accept, and what is the academic profile that we want to help improve our school? I mean, it's not horrible. That's the way a lot of businesses run. And maybe if you haven't really thought about it, but I tend to say it over and over again, that colleges are businesses, and we need to kind of think about them, that's the way they're going to approach offering dollars. It's that same way that any sort of a business would say, how am I willing to offer a coupon or a discount, or am I going to have a sale? I mean, it's the same kind of analysis that that schools are doing. We just normally don't think of them that way. I personally always kind of grew up, loved learning, and kind of had this ideal of like the academic tower, and I never really thought of them as businesses, but they are. And the admissions department, if we're going to take this business analogy even further, is like the marketing department. They are bringing in the revenue. And so they're always going to tinker with their price. They might have other people involved in kind of coming up with the final price. But at the end of the day, the admissions office is responsible for bringing in what they call net revenue. And net revenue is how much is the school going to earn for the incoming class. So how much money did we offer in scholarships? What is the tuition that is on our website and or that we're charging families, and then net, how much is that revenue going to be after we factor in all of the scholarship money that we offer? Again, it's not horrible, but we just don't tend to think in colleges in that way. And if you kind of put on your business hat, some of these tactics and strategies will make a little bit more sense. Okay. I see a lot of questions, but let me just go through a few more examples, and then I'll jump to the questions. Here's an example of the competitive merit aid that I talked about. And this is where you have to be careful with the deadlines. So the school on the left is USC, which is University of Southern California. And they've actually made some changes over the past few years. But in this current admission cycle, for what students recently applied to, first of all, what USC did is they added a new deadline for their applications in general. They added early action. They never actually had early action until, I think, 2 years ago. And that's a whole nother presentation we do about early admissions and kind of the trends that are going on there. But basically, the trend is that students are applying earlier. They're trying to get in on early action. And schools are seeing a flood of applications for those early dates. And so USC wasn't part of the early action world. And so they probably sat back, again, think from a business standpoint, they probably sat back and said, hey, wait, all these students that we might want are applying early action, or maybe even early decision. They're now getting the information from schools about that they're accepted, and we're waiting much longer to tell the students. So, we should maybe be in on this early game and at least offer early action so that we can get the students to apply to us early. We can see their applications earlier, and then we can, at least pick the ones that we want to tell them that they're accepted earlier, so that they're not waiting, or we might just actually lose out on a student who makes their decision before they even get the college's decision. Anyhow, that's but so USC started offering early action. And with starting early action, they said, you know what, in addition to people being able to apply early, if you want us to possibly consider you for a merit scholarship, you have to apply early action. So for these, if you're applying to USC and you don't recognize this, or you don't know this for a deadline, you might say, oh, well, they offer merit scholarships, which they do, but if you didn't apply early action, you're not going to be considered for merit scholarship. So here's just one example of where understanding the deadline is so important. This is just a little caveat, and I think it depends. This relates to USC has for certain majors. If you're applying to a specific major, you can apply December 1st, and that actually relates to the fact that you need to get in your portfolio and you might need to have an audition. So so now you kind of understand. This is a kind of, I guess I would say, a combination of both a competitive merit scholarship and talent, because depending on the major you're applying to, you might have to schedule those other pieces to apply for both the college and for merit scholarships. But one example of how the deadline is so important related to getting merit scholarships. The example on the right is from BU, Boston University. And again, what they are saying is kind of interesting, that their deadline, they have an early decision and they have a regular decision deadline. And the early decision deadline is November 1st. Regular decision is January 4th. And their merit scholarship decision is December 1st. So, so you might be able to send in your early decision application, and then finish up and send in, the applications for the merit scholarships by December 1st. But what's really important, right, is if you were thinking of applying regular decision, which you still could, you don't have to commit to early decision, but you're going to have your application in by December 1st. So again, another example where knowing the deadline can impact if you if you can get in on the college's merit scholarships, because if you miss the deadline, you're not going to be eligible for their scholarships. And then one other thing I highlight, it's a little hard to read just in the red, and again, this is from BU, is just to show colleges have not been always transparent, especially since the pandemic, whether or not they are looking at test scores for offering merit scholarships. I think that colleges are a little bit more transparent if they are requiring test scores for merit scholarships. Some colleges do. And they will say it on their application on their website, but other colleges, are still trying to ride the test optional wave, and so you don't. And so I'm just pointing this out in BU. You're not required to have test scores to be to submit for merit scholarships, but they're just kind of giving you a clue as to the caliber of student that they're giving merit scholarships to. So in this case, they said, though test scores are not required, the type of student that usually gets a merit scholarship has a score above 1,500 and has a test score above 3,300. So again, I wish they were more transparent, but it's a little bit of a clue of the type of student that they're looking to give their merit scholarship money to. Okay, so let me jump a tiny bit into the world of financial aid, because it relates to understanding what colleges you should be looking for what type of money. So if you're not familiar with these acronyms, COA or SAI, I'll start with COA, which is cost of attendance, which is the combination of tuition, room and board, and another set of fees. They do an estimation for travel, books, and then just general expenses. The cost of attendance is actually on a college's website, and it may not be your cost of attendance because maybe you're not traveling, the same distance, but it's the number that they use to kind of gauge whether or not and how they give out aid. SAI is the Student Aid Index. And this replaced, not that if you've never if this is your first student, you haven't been dealing with financial aid, but SAI was new this year. It replaced what used to be called EFC, Expected Family Contribution. They changed the language to Student Aid Index because it was always confusing to people when they heard the term expected family contribution, that they thought that's what they would pay. But as you'll see through these, the rest of the presentation, the expected family contribution or the Student Aid Index is not what it might be what you pay, but it's not at all a guarantee that you will pay that amount. It's usually the minimum a family will have to pay. So SAI is calculated through the FAFSA. I have a link in a few more slides to the government's estimation tool for you to do your SAI. SAI or form of SAI also comes from the College Board if the college your student is applying to is requiring a form called the CSS profile. I'm just telling you this because as part of the stage at which you guys are at, I would highly recommend that you go do an estimate of what your SAI will be or could be. And I'll have that link in a little bit. It's a government on the government website. And I also recommend that you go to the College Board, and the College Board has an estimator too. And the reason why I'm telling you to go to both places is that the College Board estimation tool will factor in a little bit more of what the colleges that use a CSS profile, their approach would be. So your numbers might be a little different, but it will show you the range at which the numbers that the colleges are going to use, especially a college that asks for a CSS profile versus a college that is only dealing with FAFSA. But the general formula that colleges look at, and you should know as well, to determine whether your family has any financial need is they take their cost of attendance and they subtract your SAI, and what is left over is, quote, your family need. So if you have those numbers and you do that calculation, if it turns out your family need is greater than 0, that's saying that you actually have a financial need, then you would want to look for schools that are offering need-based aid. If your family need turns out to be less than 0, so what that means is that the cost of attendance, I'll just throw out numbers, might have been 50,000, but when you did your calculation, your SAI turned out to be 70,000. So that means that your SAI, is higher than the cost of attendance, and your need is negative, meaning you do not have a financial need. So the only way you're going to get colleges to offer you money is to look for the colleges that offer merit scholarships. So the reason why I'm focusing on this so much is because, and you'll probably, if you're in the Paying for College 101 group or any other, social media group, you'll see around the, now from February to April and this year, May, as colleges are sending out their offers, families might say, I didn't get any need-based aid. I'm so surprised. And then you ask them, well, what colleges did they apply to? And then people will chime in and say, well, that college doesn't offer need-based aid. So it's not a surprise that they didn't give it to you. So, I feel badly that, those people didn't understand kind of the construct around how this works. But basically, some schools only offer need-based aid. Some schools, don't offer any need-based aid and only offer merit scholarships. Some schools, do a combination. That's actually the best to try and find. But if you're looking for need-based aid and you apply to a school that doesn't even offer it, well, of course, you're never going to get it. So that's why you have to understand where your family falls. Like, are you a family who needs need-based aid? And then are you applying to the right schools that are even offering it? And then on the reverse, are you a family that's never going to be eligible for need-based aid? So the only way you can reduce this cost is that you have to get merit scholarships. Therefore, you need to be making sure your students applying to the schools that are offering merit scholarships, because it's just the reverse. Actually, we see a lot, and the most popular or well-known schools that do not offer merit scholarships are, quite honestly, all the Ivies and some of the what you'd call Ivy Plus. And so you see a lot in the same time frame that I mentioned. A family will say, wow, I am shocked that I didn't get any aid, and that this school is so expensive, we can't afford this. I thought they would get merit scholarships, and it's, it might be like a Columbia, and everybody's like, well, you didn't understand this whole process because because Columbia never gives out merit scholarships. So if you were a family that didn't have financial need, of course you should have expected to pay the full price at Columbia. So when people say, I didn't really know what to expect or how much it was going to cost me, I have sympathy, but I don't. Because yes, you will never know the exact dollar amount until you get that final bill. I understand that. But honestly, you should be able to estimate, and maybe this isn't as close an estimation as you want, but you should be able to estimate between $5,000 to $10,000 what that cost is going to be for your family. So again, when the people who say, I was so shocked, I can't believe how much this is going to cost, and I thought I was going to get money, you shouldn't have been shocked. If you understand the process and done the research, you would have had a much better idea that this school I'm never going to get money from, and so I might be willing to pay the sticker price for my student, or this school I'm hoping that my student will get merit money, and if they get merit money, it should bring us down to this range. You should have you can have that general sense of where you're going to fall for the different schools that your student's going to apply to. Again, you're not going to know the exact dollar amount, but you should know, and depending on how good some schools' net price calculators are, and they range, some are very good, some are not. You might even be within a few $1,000s of what the school's going to cost. But again, I think you can estimate within 10,000. Maybe, that's not as close as we would like, but you shouldn't be shocked that you're, $40,000 or $30,000 off what the school might cost you. Okay, let me just see some of the questions. So somebody's asking, if the student applies ED, early decision, it seems that the university won't necessarily give the student merit or a lot of it, since the student is bound to go to the school based on the contract. Is that what you found? It's a really good question. And I actually dug into this a little bit more this year. I haven't actually shared what I found, but I'll tell you on like a top line of what I'm seeing. So we meaning Road to College, we crowdsource actual students' offers. And that's one of the pieces of information that's in our tool, which I'll show you. And so what that means is, this time of year from December to May, we ask families of high school seniors to share with us what their where they got accepted and how much money they were offered, or if they were offered no money, because that's important too. And we also find out, what their academic profile is and what the family's financial kind of profile is on a broad level. And the benefit to the high school seniors family is when they get an offer, they don't always know, was that a good offer? Like, you're kind of making this decision in, a black box. You don't really know what the other students at that school were offered. But by crowdsourcing, we let the person, they share with us their offer, and then by default, they see everybody else's offer at the same school. So they can start to see, hey, I did get a good offer or I didn't. And then students use that information to decide whether or not they're going to appeal their offer. And it really helps. So that's a little later in the process. But then, since we have that information, we can now look, and you as a family of a junior can also look, what were the offers that students are getting? What are they getting now? What did they get last year? What did they get the year before? And so to this question about early decision, I looked at the schools where students had gotten offers as part of their early decision acceptance. And what I noticed is it's really, honestly, a little bit by selectivity. So if your student applies early decision to a really selective school, and even though that school might offer some form of merit scholarship, to some extent, you're right, they're not giving out the merit scholarship money then, because the student is already saying, I'm coming to your school. And so they're saving their merit scholarship money till later. But for schools that become a little less selective, they are still giving money in merit early decision. And what I even noticed is that early action schools on that get less selective, they are giving more money early action, because I think that they are trying to kind of seal the deal. So they know the student has applied early action. They know that the student has other options. But those schools are trying to say, hey, we're willing to give you this money. We're willing to tell you early on, and hoping that the student will honestly want to maybe stop the chaos that everybody goes through and say, okay, I'm willing to accept and just go with this school. So I think this idea of whether or not the school is giving out merit early, if they're ultra selective and they potentially might give merit, they're probably not giving it as part of their early admissions, but kind of the less selective the college is, they are still giving the money as part of the early rounds. Okay, just a really quick family story. I'll just summarize what's here, but basically this was a family that reached out and their student had applied to 6 schools, but 4 of them were reaches. And basically they didn't kind of take a strategic and balanced approach to their students' college list. It was great. The student got in he got waitlisted at 4 of these schools. He got accepted to 2 of the schools, but the 2 schools he got accepted to, one was financially not even possible. So you have to question why they even allowed the student to apply to that school. And then the second was a school he didn't even want to go into, even though it was something that they could financially afford. So I share this story to really kind of show that you need to be strategic about every kind of college you put on your students, and you and your student agree that they're going to apply to. And, if a school is financially out of reach and your student still wants to apply, I think for their benefit and for your benefit, they need to know that ahead of time. So they might want to say, well, I want to just give it a shot. Okay, they can give it a shot. But if they didn't get any money or they don't find any private scholarship money and it's not affordable at the end, they need to kind of know that before they apply. It's a little bit of a parenting style, but that's just my suggestion. But the other part of the story is that my goal in kind of everything that we do, even whether we're talking about test prep and particularly about applying to colleges, is you want to have options. So in the March, April, May timeframe, when students are making decisions, you want them to have a school that is affordable and they like to go to. You want them to have a school that maybe was a reach but was still affordable and they got in and they can decide. You just don't want to be backed up against the wall when your student has to choose where they're going to college, that there isn't an affordable school, because that's when families are forced to take loans that they didn't want or they didn't expect. But again, if you kind of are doing your work ahead of time and you're estimating what your costs are, and you're even kind of having the discussion about what your tolerance is for loans ahead of time, then when it comes time to make that final decision, nothing should be a surprise from a financial standpoint, because you should either have the money set aside and you're willing to, and you have the budget to pay for the colleges that your student got into, or they got into a school that can offer your student money, if you're willing, then you're willing to take out the loans. But all of that conversation should happen now. That this is February of junior year. It shouldn't happen May of senior year. So that's my advice. Wow, it's already 10 to 1. I'm gonna jump over and show you college our Insights tool so that you can kind of see some of the information that I'm talking about that can help make the search easier. Where did I lost? Oh, I lost my, hold on. Okay, let me share again. Okay, I think, can you guys see? It says, welcome to Insights, find merit, compare colleges, build your lists. Okay, so if you come here, this is the sign-in screen. You would hit get started. You would set up an account. I'm just going to go straight in because I have an account. And just so you know, if you're new, well, first of all, you can create a free account. So anybody can go in. I'll just put the link right now. It's R2CInsights.roadtocollege.com. You can create a free account. Oops, there's no slash at the end. You can create a free account. You can search each individual college. I'll just, and you can find information about it. You can look at, test optional, all their scores, their admit rates, the deadlines. So the one thing, I have an account that has access to everything, but as a free account, you would not get access to this button that says crowdsourced offers. So this is the data that I was talking about that families ahead of you are sharing. And so I'll just look in. So let's see. So we're in the 2024. This is right now. This is this current season. And these are students who have, oops, my cursor's a little wonky, have shared their offers. So, so you can see, actually, here's a good example of Marist. Good school, but not that uber competitive school. They offer early action, and it's when you start to look at these offers, it's pretty. You see a pattern. You see the pattern of what the school is doing. Obviously, 15,000 is a big number that Marist is offering in terms of merit scholarships. We organize these offers based on what we call the SAI or the EFC range, because there's a little bit of a connection with what your SAI is and what your household income is. Obviously, the higher your household income, the more likely the higher your SAI is going to be. So, so if you wanted to jump, and honestly, most families who are above a 60,000 SAI are not going to be eligible for need-based aid. So, you can kind of confidently jump at this section and see, okay, these are the students who aren't getting need-based aid and they're only going to get merit scholarships. And you can start to look at the GPA, who even submitted a test score or not. So if it's not listed here, it means that the student didn't submit a test score with their application to Marist. And you start to get, a sense of what money that school gave out. Oh, I didn't realize we have a lot. So we have 26 offers, and this is just, a lot of these came in from early admission from Marist. And you can go back to last year as well and kind of scroll through and see, similarly, were they giving the same amount of money? Did they drop it this year? We have a lot of offers from last year from Marist. So this is part of the paid version of College Insights, but this is honestly what's a lot of people really like. I will actually even jump over. I just saw this comment right before I got on here. Somebody was saying, I'm going to highlight this, Susie Milner. What she did, which I love kind of hearing how people use the data and how they use the tool. She said, I have a column on my student spreadsheet for the max offer. And she went through College Insights last year and she found the max offer for the schools that her student was interested in. And then she put in the average, and she just said it just gave us a realistic view of what the range could be. And I thought that was a great tip. So just wanted to share it. Okay, so let me jump to Power Search. This is part of the tool that I like. So here's where you can start to narrow down on the schools that either offer merit, offer need-based aid, or where your student can have the best chance. So one way of using Power Search is you don't even have to do any filters, right? We have a lot of schools in here. Some of these are 2-year schools, but you can go to the sort, and you can sort by different criteria that we have about the school. So let's just pick one. So these are the two important columns if you're looking for merit. It is what percentage of freshmen are offered merit, and what percentage of freshmen who didn't have any need were offered merit, and then what was the average merit award, right? So there might be schools in here, and I think Duke is one of them, that comes up and says, wow, they have this really high average merit award that they offer, but they only offer it to like 2% of the students. So you have to know those two numbers to know is it realistic that a lot of students or a fair number of students are actually being offered merit, or is it just like this really selective, 1 or 2% of students that are being offered merit? But you can go and not do any other filters and just sort by these two columns if you want, or these two data fields. So let's do average merit aid. I knew. So Duke, you can see comes up. So they probably give a few full tuition scholarships or even full rides to a few students, but it's only 3%. So, how valuable is that? The other thing I want to point out is you'll probably quickly see, well, how can there be a percentage that is over 100? And let me step back for 1 second and tell you the data that we use in Insights. So this data comes from 3 sources. The biggest source is the Common Data Set, which, if you're not familiar, is data that colleges do share. Majority of them share it publicly, but they share it on their websites. And it is compiled and used by 3 main sources. This is what U.S. News and World uses to create their rankings. Peterson's is a company that licenses this data, and then the College Board has access to all the common data set information. So it's actually really valuable information. We do a whole nother session on what the common data set is and all the different pieces of data that's in that. But if you want to see a common data set for any school, you can just Google. You could say Duke University Common Data Set. It will bring you to a web page usually that has the most recent common data set and maybe several years back. And then pull it up, and all the common data sets are in a common format. That's how it got its name, common data set. And you can skip around to different sections. But quite honestly, there aren't many resources. I don't want to say we're the only one, but I don't know of a lot of others that compile all of the common data set information in one place and then allow you to do all these filtering and sorting of it. What families tend to do, again, which is not bad, is they might find out about a few colleges, then they go specifically to those colleges, they get the data that they want from the common data set, they create their own spreadsheet. That is not bad, but what they're missing out is they're not able to do this, what I call a reverse lookup or a reverse search, where you can put in what you want and then the colleges come back based on the common data set data. So that's what we built here, because we know that the common data set information is valuable. It's the best data out there that you can get our hands on. And so we wanted to make it easier for families to get access to it and to use it and not have to go to each college's website, not necessarily have to create all of their own spreadsheets. But anyhow, so let me go back to why is this over 117%? Is because the common data set is self-reported data from colleges. Quite honestly, all college data, even if it's from the government, is self-reported. Nobody, and there is no mechanism to kind of check to say, is the college actually telling us the right numbers? And in very rare cases, honestly, there was the case of Columbia University that maybe they purposely didn't provide the right numbers. But other than that, most colleges are doing their best. They are providing the right numbers, but either A, they make a mistake, B, and I'm on a whole nother, it's a Google chat of people who manage, it's called institutional research. That's the department within colleges that actually have to gather all this information for the colleges and for the common data set. And there are constant questions of, does that field supposed to include, these types of students? So sometimes the person who's in charge of this just interprets what the description of the field is incorrectly, or they just, make a mistake and they give the, they might not give the accurate information. And again, I don't think it's purposeful. It just might be an interpretation issue. So we do this calculation. This is not a field in the common data set, freshmen without need receiving merit. We take the different pieces and we calculate this because they have the raw data that can do this. And in some cases, like in Web Institute, it comes out 117%. What this tells me is that there's probably somebody, again, not purposely, but somebody probably either didn't put in the accurate information. Maybe they interpreted the field differently. And so my guess is that Webb Institute actually offers 100% of their students, merit aid who don't have any financial need, but obviously they can't offer 117%. It's really hard to, find out from the colleges, like, if you see this information, like if you see a number that's over 100%, it's most likely that even if you got the raw numbers and from the common data set itself and you did the calculation, that's what it would be. And at that point, I would, if this is a school that you're really interested in, or your students really interested in, I would urge you to reach out to the college. And if it's a particular data field that you want to know about, and ask them, if they can give you more accurate information. But it's probably generally, obviously, this is telling us that everybody at Webb gets some form of merit scholarship money, but the 117 number is just not possible. So somebody asking, how much is the paid version? Of this, we offer, you can sign up monthly for $24.99, and then just decide month to month how long you want to keep it. The other value of College Insights, Insights, is that you can obviously save these colleges and then you can make lists. I'll show you that in a second. So we also offer an annual version because a lot of people just kind of use this as their place to store all of their information related to building college lists. You can create different lists. You can then share a list to your student, or you can share it to somebody else, even if you're working with a college counselor, and say, can you look over this list? So there's sharing capability. And then you can even take notes. So if you are going on a tour, and we'll click into Duke, and you see that little button there, and you wanted to write yourself a note, you can take notes about what you're seeing on the tour. So again, some people just use this as kind of their repository of information, and they go back and forth to it. And it's also mobile friendly. So I'm showing you this on a laptop, but you can pull this up and type in your notes on your phone as you're going on a tour. Well, thank you. Somebody actually shared all of the different prices. So you can do this monthly, you can do this annually. And then we have another tier. If you want, we actually produce monthly videos on all the different topics related to the process of college admission. And we have a whole library of videos, plus we're always doing new ones. Actually, we do 2 a month. So if you want access to that library, you can get this tool plus access to the library, and that level is called Insights Plus. So I will send that information out later, but thank you for the person who took the screenshot. Let me show you, go back to the power search one more time. So I showed you how you can search this by not even filtering. You can just basically, you can sort by all these different mechanisms. But if you want to filter, you can filter by a specific college. Like maybe there's 5 colleges your students already interested in. Let's see what they're like, and you can kind of plug in those colleges. You can search by majors, so which colleges have different majors. You can search by location, and the location is both by state. You can pick multiple states, or by regions, because the government actually lumps colleges together by certain regions. And you can keep adding all these filters, and also search by cost of attendance. So let's say, I'll make this up. Let's say I want to find a school in New England that is a private school, that their costs, before I even get any, or my student might even get any merit scholarships, that the private school cost is between $30,000 to $50,000. Okay, now this is now schools in the New England area that have a cost of attendance between 30 and 50,000. You might be able to get that cost down, but that's the sticker price of those schools. And now you can put this into a list. You can say, add this to my list, add this to an existing list, create a new list. You could sort this by different fields that we talked about. So there's lots of different ways to filter the list. Let me show you one other, which is an important one, is one big concept right, is that the students that are in the top 25th percentile academically are the students most likely to receive merit scholarships from any college, whether it's competitive, automatic, or even talent-based, right? Because again, that's the purpose of what why the colleges are using these scholarships and the money. They want to attract with who they feel is like their upper end, most desirable academic profile student. So how do you know your student is going to, is in that upper end? The best way is to use the test score. I know this isn't ideal. I know we're in the world of test optional, but the reality is that colleges keep their most accurate information based on test score. And that's probably that is a problem in that these test score ranges have been creeping up, but I still kind of recommend you search by that just for the purpose of research. So, and I always, of course, I get the question, but what if my student didn't even take a test? They didn't even take a sample test, or they haven't taken a test yet. You can take their GPA, and there's, you could honestly Google SAT, ACT test score, convert to GPA, or GPA convert to SAT test score. I have, this is one site, they do a good job. It's called Prep Scholar, and they show you what the SAT score is and what the likely GPA range might be, or vice versa. If you have the GPA and you want to kind of come back to figure out what the test score range is. So I would just convert it. This is all nothing. This is not exact science. This is all about, research, and you're going to kind of research, in different ways. So if your student has a test score, oops, sorry. Just want to move my screen up. And now you can say, okay, I want to filter the schools by,
the fuck.
I want to filter the schools to say where the ACT is between a 30 and a 32. Sorry, I have to clean my mouse. It's being very funky. Okay. And then you can say, I want to search the schools based on if this range is in the average that the school tells us for test scores, or I want to see where this range is the top of the range. That's the range, the top 75th percentile is another way of saying it, or I'm sorry, the 75th percentile or the top 25th percentile, it's the same thing. And if my student is in that category, then they're most likely to receive merit scholarships. So I would want to search that way. And a third way which we added, which is new, is you can also search all the crowdsource offers that I showed you. So you can also say, okay, for this range of 30 to 32, show me all the schools where I know students actually got offers because their offer is part of the crowdsource offer for those schools. So I'll just put in for the top range right now. And remember, we already filtered this by New England. And so now these are schools that if I look at their test score, and I'll show you that in a minute, their test score, their 75th percentile test score is between 30 and a 32. And they happen to be in New England. And then now I can sort. We actually have this sorted by average merit aid. So here's Bennington College, or let's go to Connecticut College. Its cost of attendance is expensive. It's $84,000. But they are giving 99% of the students merit scholarships. We know, because we already ran this filter, that if my student is between a 30 and a 32, that they're likely to get merit from the school because it's at the top of Connecticut College's academic range, and the average merit is $24,000 that Connecticut is giving. Let's click in, because average obviously is kind of, it's a combination of the high and the low. So there are going to be students that get above 24,000, and there's going to be students that get below. So let's see if we have any crowdsourced information about Connecticut. Okay, so we don't really have much yet. I think this is people who have just gotten decisions but haven't gotten their offers, because offers are coming in slowly this year because of the FAFSA delay. But let's look at last year, and let's look at the top because of the families that are above 60,000, and we see a little bit of a range. So there were some students that got 34,000, some students that got 32,000. I saw somebody that got 22,000, 27,000. So now, so that's you're getting a little bit more of a peak. That's what this person had recommended, which I like their idea. They kind of made a slightly separate spreadsheet, and they said they took the highest potential merit scholarship that they saw in the crowdsource, and then they put the average, and they knew that their student would probably get something in between that. And they used that to estimate what their costs might be. So these are just kind of different ways that you can use the power search. Let me just show you one other thing. When you finally create a list, and it doesn't have to be a final list. I mean, of course, I do this for a lot of people, but you can see I have tons of different lists with different names. Let's just pull this up. This is called the NASCAC schools. Okay. When you create a list, you can now view it in what I call the table view. And this is for the people who feel more comfortable with spreadsheets or just tables and charts. And you can now sort any of these columns, and you can actually delete colleges from the list. You can, in this type of research, you can add colleges to a different list. You can add your notes in here. So let me go, and there's lots of good, interesting information here. I just added all of the different information we have. We have what we call about school profile, data on admissions, data specifically on need-based and merit scholarships, and then just financial data, which is like, the cost, the cost of attendance. But you can, of these NESCAC schools, I can say, let me look at like how selective they are. So I can go to the admission section and say, we break out the admission data by what they call, which is the overall admit rate. That's a lot of what usually gets publicized at the end of the admission season. Trinity College had an acceptance rate of 36%. That 36% is a combination of if they had any early decision, Trinity didn't, but if they had early decision and regular decision, it's the combination. So let's look at Bates. So Bates is, their overall admission rate is 14%, but look at that, holy cow, their early decision rate is 48%. So by default, it means that their regular decision is much more competitive to get into. It's 11%. And look at this piece of information. This is the percent of the class filled early decision is 61%. So Bates is, again, think of colleges as a business. Bates is using early decision very strategically to fill 61% of their class with students who, once they are accepted, they have to come. And basically, Bates has committed all of that revenue in early decision. Good or bad, I'm not going to make a comment on it now, but obviously this is their strategy. And now, by research, you know this ahead of time. So if Bates was a college your student was seriously interested in, honestly, I mean, they'd have to decide whether or not they'd want to apply early decision. Of course, they can apply regular decision. They'd have to just know that the chances of getting in are much, much more difficult regular decision. But by doing this research ahead of time, you know this. So I just kind of picked one particular school, but you can sort any of these columns however you want. So you can look at the admissions data. The other piece of information I like is here is the column about merit scholarships, what percentage of students without need are getting merit scholarships, and what percentage and what's the dollar amount is. So obviously I'm just kind of looking at Bates. We know that Bates, they don't give anything. So again, now, so if it wouldn't be good to hear from a parent in, April or May of next year that said, oh my God, my student applied to Bates. We actually got in part of that 11% regular decision. And how come we didn't get merit scholarships? Boom, they don't give merit scholarships. So, you can, by doing the pre-research, you really should have a better idea of what to expect. But this is just another view, how you can dig in deeper. You can see all this data. You can, sort the columns, ascending or descending. You can add these schools to a different list. You can delete them, and you can add notes. So that is my quick review. And oops, sorry, let me get back. I know I've gone over the hour. It is 1:16. And I honestly really didn't even get a chance to look at some questions. So I'll just scroll through and look at a few questions. Hopefully this was helpful. So what is a reasonable number of colleges to apply to? Really good question. We did an analysis of all the early admission stats that kind of came in from December to January. If you want to see that, that's on our YouTube. But the bottom line is that more students are applying to more colleges. As the system has become more chaotic, and I kind of like use the term like there's more velocity in the system, right? There's more, it's easier for students to apply to colleges. It's easier for students to add another college to the Common App. Colleges are actually even making it easier. Well, they made it easier because of test optional. I'm seeing some colleges take away their essays because, again, an essay is a hurdle. So if they just want the students to apply, they want those application numbers to increase. It's kind of funny. I was in doing that and gathering the data for the presentation that I'm referring to about early admissions. I was trying to, find out the schools that had just released all their information in December and maybe in January. And what I noticed is that colleges were no longer wanting to say what their actual early acceptance rate was or early decision rate was. All they wanted to kind of like announce with like big horns and like balloons was how many applications they got and what percentage of the applications increased over the past year. Like, Clemson increased, whatever, 50%. And that's what they wanted to shout. They didn't want to actually tell us the data that we need to know is, okay, great, congratulations, your applications increased. No, what was the actual acceptance rate? Because that's what we need to know. Maybe, I don't know. It's just a weird dynamic that's happening. So sorry, to go back to answering your question, the trend is more students because of this, chaos in the system. There's unpredictability. There's just unpredictability in terms of where students are getting in and how much money they're getting. So students are applying to more schools because, what might have been a school that was easy to predict a few years ago is no longer easy to predict because they now have double the applications that they've gotten. So, it depends in terms of how many schools to apply to. I think it depends on what you're going for. So if your student is going for, really selective schools, I think you probably are going to be, they should be applying to, 10, 12, maybe even a little bit more because, again, there's so much unpredictability in the results. If your student is applying for merit, or really, the term is chasing merit, I also would apply to, that probably 10 to 12 range because you want to see all the different possible merit awards that your student can be offered, or, you're not quite sure. We have a family that's in one of the membership programs that we run called Premium, and they are what I call, they are honestly upper middle class, but in terms of their financial situation, but they got a lot of things that they need to take care of, whether it's supporting a mother and they have a child with a disability and they have, 2 other students that are going to college. So, they recognized early that even though their income looks like they can pay the full price, they just had all these other expenses and they weren't going to be able to. So they are, truly a family that is chasing merit. Their student has done well. They're using our academic profile to their advantage. And she probably could get into, a more selective school, but they're going to schools that are, one level of selectivity down, and they are getting the money, but there was a purposeful approach. They, targeted the schools with full tuition or full ride scholarships, which actually I didn't show you is a column in that table. So we actually identify which schools offer full ride and full tuition. And, you know, they are doing the extra applications for the scholarship essays, and they're getting the money. It took work. It took research on the parents' side. It took research on both the parent and the student side to go visit schools or kind of, you know, do their research to decide which one she was going to apply to. And then it took work on the student side to really, you know, do the essays that are needed for all these different schools and for all the different possible merit scholarships. So I feel like I'm kind of going around to answer your question. It depends on what your student's goals are. If your student has a goal of going to a really selective college, they're going to have to apply in that 10 to 15 range. Is your student chasing merit? You're probably better off applying in the 10 to 15 school range. If your student is going to be happy at your local state school, or they're you know, happy to apply to a school that you know, might not be really selective, that takes probably 50% or more of their students, then your student could maybe apply to 5 schools or less. So again, it just depends on what your student and your family's goals are in terms of how many applications you need to apply to. So I will look at these other questions a little later. I do have to jump off because I have to be someplace at 1:30, but I hope that this was helpful. Feel free, let me put in, you can send questions to support@roadtocollege.com. Just in general, you know, whether it's about, you know, finding colleges with merit scholarships, whether it's about using our Insights tool, whether it's about joining any of the other levels, whether it's about you need help with the financial planning approach. Send us whatever your questions are. We'll try and figure out how we can help, or we will connect you to somebody else in our network that can help you better. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I hope that this is helpful. Thank you for the waves. Goodbye. Nice to see you guys. And have a good weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.